Joining me right now to talk some football, Matt Lombardo, who is the NFL insider for FanSided. He also has the Matt Lombardo Show podcast. Matt, thank you for the time. It is much appreciated. Let's start off with Deshaun Watson here. No indictment for Watson from a Brazoria County grand jury today. That is, of course, the second grand jury that's involved Watson. Reportedly, he's going to have his first press conference as a Brown tomorrow. Matt, what are your expectations for that press conference?
Yeah, Nick, thanks for having me on. I think it's certainly going to be a charged atmosphere inside that press conference. And I think that not only Deshaun Watson, but also Jimmy Haslam, Kevin Stefanski, and Andrew Berry, they're going to have to face some tough questions for everything they traded away, not only the package of picks, not only how they structured the contract, but the reports that are out there that they spent all of 30 minutes discussing these allegations and these civil suits with Deshaun Watson and reportedly didn't speak to any of the women who are filing these lawsuits. To me, I think that this whole process, it's kind of everything that's wrong in the NFL right now, that an organization would give up so much and protect the player so much in terms of how they structured this contract without doing, reportedly, the due diligence with the women who were involved in these lawsuits. So I'm going to be really fascinated to hear what all of these parties involved have to say.
All right, let's move on. Let's look at the big trade that happened yesterday, Tyreek Hill to Miami. What was your initial reaction, Matt, to that deal?
Yeah, I thought, Nick, that was one of those moves that felt like it came out of nowhere, because all that we had heard and people inside the league believed that the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill were going to come to terms on an extension. And next thing you know, yesterday around noontime, of course, you have the Miami Dolphins trading 5 draft picks for Tyreek Hill, who, according to an NFL executive I spoke to last night, is still a top 5 player in this league if you take quarterbacks out of the equation because of his game-breaking speed, because of what he brings to the table. And, my 2 big takeaways here, Nick, are, number one, the Miami Dolphins are all in, and they're for real. When you look at Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, Chase Edmonds, that's as electrifying a collection of skill players as you're going to find in the AFC or really in the NFL right now. That all comes down to whether Tua Tagovailoa can take that next step. But I think the bigger picture here is between the 5 draft picks for a wide receiver. You look at the trade that the Raiders made to bring Devontae Adams to Vegas. You look at the $85 million that Christian Kirk got from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The NFL is now telling you that wide receiver is one of those premier positions, right up there with quarterback, right up there with offensive tackle, right up there with corner. And it just seems like we're beginning a new era in terms of how the NFL views the receiver position and just how important the receivers are to team success moving forward from here.
Matt Lombardo, NFL insider with FanSided. He also has the Matt Lombardo Show podcast, joining us here on the Nick Cattle Show on this Thursday. Kansas City added MVS today, Marquez Vandal-Scantling, and you look at that and you say, well, okay, he comes in, Hill goes out. How much do you think this offense is going to change without Hill and MVS in?
Yeah, I think that, this is more of a move with MVS basically dropping into that offense in the same role that Demarcus Robinson had.
Yep.
And Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the receiver who is the red zone target, the guy who operates underneath and over the middle. What I'm going to be really fascinated to see happen is what they do in the NFL draft. Do they move up and draft a Chris Olave early in the draft with those 2 first-round picks they acquired in the Hill trade? Do they look at a guy like Jahan Dotson out of Penn State and they look at his 4.4 speed and what he's shown on film, taking the top off the defense, and that he can kind of occupy that role? But talking to scouts and a couple executives last night, Nick, they basically told me that they're going to need to find a guy who not only has speed, but can force defenses to play bracket coverage to open things up for the Travis Kelce's and the Juju Smith-Schusters, because Tyreek Hill really created so much space for Kelce to be a Hall of Fame caliber tight end when they were in that same offense together. Their offense is going to have to change. And as an executive told me, you're looking for Tyreek Hill in the draft, those guys are damn hard to find. So good luck.
Matt, are you okay with what Miami gave up?
I am in the current situation where they're trying to evaluate whether Tua can be the answer, right? And not only are they trying to see if he can be a top 10 or so quarterback in this league, because I think we're starting to see that if you don't have that guy, you need to move off that guy and try to find one. And, the best way to do that is surrounding him with weapons. And I also think that when you look at Mike McDaniel arriving as the head coach, I think it's really easy to see Tyreek Hill occupying a really similar role to how they use Deebo Samuel in San Francisco. Not just deep down the field, not just on, crossing routes over the middle and yards after the catch, but lining up in the backfield as well from time to time. I could really see Tyreek Hill with all of that speed in a similar role. And if you're looking to get that kind of player, and if you're looking to not only evaluate your quarterback, but make a move in a conference that now has Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Russell Wilson, you need playmakers. Miami went out and they got one of the best in the league at that.
When you look at Tua, I think this is it for him. Make or break season. Would you agree?
Oh, no doubt about it. If he can't get it done with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, Chase Edmonds, the list goes on and on. They bring in Teron Armstead to really anchor the offensive line in front of him. They brought in Cedric Wilson as well. They brought in Connor Williams to bolster the interior of that line. This offense is ready to go. And if they won down the stretch the last couple of years in spite of Tua, he's going to have to prove that with all of these weapons and this improved offensive line that they can win because of Tua. And if that's the case, I think Miami's going to be a really tough out. But if he continues to be a liability, then the Dolphins are going to have to figure out pretty quickly how to get a first-round pick back next year to go and get a rookie quarterback, because they don't have that much draft capital right now. So they need to figure it out. And I agree with you. I think that the best way to look at this for Tua is it's a make-or-break year with a really high ceiling and a floor that could lead Miami to going in a different direction next year.
Matt Lombardo with us. Just two more for you, Matt. And again, thanks for the time. What does Green Bay do now that both Adams and MVS have moved on?
Yeah, I think you scratch your head and you're trying to figure out, well, what the heck did we do bringing Aaron Rodgers back, right? Because if you're going to commit $200 million or whatever it is to Aaron Rodgers and you're going to let Devontae Adams and MVS walk out the door, I'm not quite sure what the upside was there and why you wouldn't have tried to trade Aaron Rodgers to get a whole bunch of draft picks, turn it over to Jordan Love for a year or two and try to build around him. But in the situation they're in, I think that the same names we talked about with the Kansas City Chiefs make a lot of sense for the Green Bay Packers because of how they use the Devontae Adams. I think they're going to have to look to the NFL draft. They're going to have to try to, land one or two of those top receivers in round one. And they're kind of in this straddling the line between a quasi-rebuild and going for it. But I'll say this, I wrote in my national column this week, there's never been an easier road for Tom Brady to get to a Super Bowl, right? When you look at the quarterbacks we talked about in the AFC compared to the NFC, which basically features Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott, it might not take much to get Green Bay back to an NFC championship game just because the conference is so weak compared to the AFC. So I wouldn't count the Packers out, but that offense is going to look a lot different. They're going to have to get a young playmaking receiver to complement Aaron Rodgers if they're going to take that next step.
Matt, one last one for you. You got about a minute. All this talk about wide receivers, of course, the 49ers, they're looking to, extend Deebo Samuel. At least that's the news that's been thrown out there, the last couple of months. Would you entertain trading Samuel in this wide receiver market?
I don't think that I would, only because I think that Deebo Samuel was one of the three or four most electrifying players in the league and maybe a top 5 matchup nightmare. And if you're turning the page to Trey Lance in his second season, his first full season as a starter, I'm looking to add around him. I'm not looking to take away weapons. So if I were San Francisco, I'd have a little bit of sticker shock at the spending that's going on at the wide receiver position over the last few weeks. But I would basically hand a blank check to Deebo because him, along with George Kittle, they might be the most important players on that roster right now if you're going to a rookie quarterback.
Matt, thanks for the time. We appreciate it. Let's do it again soon. Great stuff.
Appreciate it, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. There goes Matt Lombardo, NFL insider for FanSided, also the Matt Lombardo Show podcast. 916-339-1140 is the text line. Phone